today we're going to be talking about tRPC. First, we'll do a round robin intro of who everybody is, and then we can just start talking tRPC and everything you can do with it, and why you'd use it, and all the fun stuff that comes with it. Yeah, feel free, somebody, to introduce yourself, tell people who you are, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
It's
I'll
my
start.
first.
Hi, I'm Sachin, RC core team member. Like I guess everyone else here is too. I've been with tRPC for like 2 years now. I've been contributing to open source for like the same amount of time though, and I'm currently in high school. I'm I'm 18. Yeah, that's it.
Julius. Yeah, same basically. So open source since like, okay, not a year, maybe half year. Started like Create E3 app, and then got into like tRPC when it was like in the V10 migration. Started doing some examples there, and then yeah, went deeper and deeper, and now last week I got promoted to core team member. So I'm currently in I guess it's university. I don't know how the school system in America really works. So
That sounds
in
legit.
Sweden, it's a university, third year right now. So we'll see how far I'll continue. But yeah, that's me.
Was it my turn?
Yeah, it's you.
my
I
name-
mean, everybody already knows who I am on my channel, so yeah, you're the last one.
Fair. That's fair. My name's Trash. I'm senior engineer at Netflix. I don't think I've been around tRPC too long, to be honest. But that's my goal for 2023. Do a bunch of cool shit for tRPC. So that's pretty much my only open source thing I participate in now. So yeah, pretty sweet. I'm the dumbest one. It's great.
There's nothing wrong with being the dumbest one. That's how you learn lots, right?
I know, that's the best
Right.
part.
That's the best part about being the dumbest.
Mhm.
Cool. So let's just start with what is tRPC? So there's probably people in my chat or people on YouTube right now who have no idea what tRPC is, what it's for, and then we can talk about how it works. I don't know which one of you wants to take it away, but go for it.
So tRPC is like an easy way to build APIs for any app. Like you can connect your backend to your front end with like very minimal amount of code and no code gen. So like if you're using Next.js, you might be using the API routes if you're not using tRPC. But those are like completely untyped, and you'll need to write some extra code like connecting your front end types to your back end types. And tRPC kind of abstracts that magic away for you. So you don't like really have to think about it, and it's really easy to create an API.
But let's just back up a little bit there, which is like a really good description. The key element here is that basically it's framework agnostic. So you don't have to be in like Next.js, which is probably its most popular form, which is what a lot of people see today. The big thing is that it doesn't matter. You could be using Astro, or you could be using, just Node or whatever to make this type safe APIs. So it doesn't have to be part of any of those. Like, it doesn't have to be Next.js, even though that's kind of what a lot of people know from.
Correct. It's completely framework agnostic.
Which makes it really easy, in my opinion. So I obviously come from Next.js, so that's my thing. That's always been my thing. And, it was when I first saw tRPC, I was surprised at how easy it was to make this type safe APIs. When I first, I was building everything from scratch essentially, and it would take forever, and it was a pain, and there was always suffering, and it just made you hate TypeScript even more. And then when I first learned about tRPC, I was like, oh, this is like hot shit. Like, this is what I want. This is like, I already know what my schema is going to look like. I already know what my output's going to be and what my input's going to be, but I just want it to be safe. So yeah, that was super cool for me to see like tRPC and just like out there in the space and be like, oh, I can finally do what I've been trying to do for 6 or 8 months in like minutes, which was pretty wild. So if you were to say today, like, okay, we know what tRPC is, when would you decide to use tRPC? Like, what's the decision factor there? Because I know that's such a big thing here, which is like, people seem to think that tRPC is like the silver bullet, in that like, oh, it's just, that's all you use. Every single time, just use tRPC and your world will be great, which is not true. So how do you make that deciding factor of when to use tRPC versus something else in the space?
I think when you have like some fairly small teams, it's like very beneficial because it accelerates your like workflow so much. I know I made a project last year where we just used Next API endpoints and made a REST API. And we didn't use any of this Swagger code gen or anything. We just wrote our types on the front end, and then on the back end we did some stuff which wasn't very type safe. And then like every time you need to make a new endpoint, you need to like redo so much logic when you parse the query params and all of that. And then when you return it, you don't really know what you're returning. Like it doesn't like track back to the front end. So if you make a change on the back end, like your types on the front end might just be outdated, right? So like if you don't want like schema driven development, I don't know if that's a word people use, but then it's like it accelerates your workflow so much, and creating an endpoint is just as easy as writing the sort validator and then your like API logic, and then tRPC does all the magic for you. And I think like when you don't, I don't know how to put it, but when that's enough for you and you don't really like care about that, like a PR might break that API contract, because then it might be like time to go to GraphQL or something. I don't know. I've never used GraphQL, but I heard that people use it for that.
Yeah, Theo said he's in the YouTube chat right now. He said start with trying to use tRPC because it's the best DX, and then move off it if you have a reason not to use it, and then start as simple as possible and add complexity as needed. And I think that kind of highlights tRPC in general, which is like, yeah, it has an awesome DX, and it takes away some of that complexity. And somebody who's used GraphQL before, who makes me sad inside. Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. Like, yeah, there's some points where like GraphQL is like, you have to go there. But with tRPC, usually for most people, there's a reason not to go there, right? There's a reason not to go away from tRPC. You can usually, in most cases, find a good way to use tRPC in small teams where you need that acceleration of like, I just want to get something done quickly and show that this works, and then we can start doing the complex stuff. And then if tRPC fails, then we have then we can move away from tRPC, but it's unlikely that you will, I think. I've encouraged a few like startups in the clerk space to use tRPC because they were running up against things, and now they're just like, yeah, I won't use anything else. This is the way to make my life easier, and I can have much more velocity than I could if I was trying to do this myself.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to add, I think it's really easy to move off of tRPC too, if you need to do that. And like, I think Theo said this before, and a lot of people have said it before, but yeah, it's just like writing your basic logic for tRPC, and you can transfer it to any API framework.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a vendor lock-in. Like once you're in tRPC world, you can't get out of it. It's quite the opposite. It's fair because of the way that tRPC works. It's fairly easy to get back out fairly quickly with a lot less work than I've seen in other cases where you build your REST API, and the way to get out is to rewrite your whole back end, which is what you definitely don't want to do. Not in this world.
Yeah, I want to add something because I think there's going to be like a certain place where I think TRP is going to shine the most. Mainly because of like I don't know if they're necessarily constraints, but preferences. So like we all know, but with tRPC, I think tRPC shines, in a monorepo and everything's TypeScript from the back, and you kind of own everything. So for that reason, I think we'll see probably more adoption in like the smaller to medium sized companies, right? Versus like someone like Netflix where, everything's kind of distributed and like at least on my team, I don't really own like the back end. It's in Java. It's a completely different language and it's a lot harder to kind of spin up those things. But due to like the nature of, tRPC allowing you to basically ship faster, those are like some of the reasons why I think we'll see an uptick of usage of tRPC in like smaller to medium sized companies. So I want to call that out. And this is kind of like just my prediction. I don't particularly. So in Netflix, we do use tRPC on some apps for sure. But like to be able to like migrate an existing huge application to tRPC, I don't think that's a reality. It's more of like if you can basically boot up a Springfield or a Greenfield project, then I would probably prefer to use tRPC versus like GraphQL or something else like that. I don't even know if that made sense. I just started blacking out and blabbing.
I think you got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And then the other thought of that is too, like internal tools is really easy. Like Theo just brought this up too, which is like internal tools, like use tRPC to spin up something that's an internal tool, and then you have less like constraints there versus, like building out, like you said, trying to take a big app that Netflix, for example, can't just go like, okay, cool, we're going to write like our core foundation on tRPC. Let's pull back. Like that's not realistic, but those internal tools or smaller tools or greenfield tools like tRPC adoption should be probably most people's first port of call. I would totally agree with that. Cool. So we've talked kind of about why you would use it and the adoption of like who and where. Let's talk about do you want to talk about how we do this, like how we set something up, or do you want to talk about something else? Do you want to show something off? Does anybody want to show something off now, or do you want to hold that out for a bit later and have a more discussion?
I want to ask Julius a question because I'm curious. This is my first time actually like seeing Julius face to face.
Same.
I feel like we've kind of been talking on the internet for a hot minute. I'm curious for Julius because I know he does like the T3 stuff. Was that kind of your introduction to tRPC, or did you know about tRPC before this whole T3 app came to fruition?
I mean, I got introduced, or like I started watching like Theo early last year, quite early at least. And so I didn't know about it like before then. I also didn't like start using it right at that time. I probably like when he made that first viral video, what was it, that Pokemon thing? He used it and then I tried it, but then didn't really fall in love until like the Create T3 app started like getting big. And then like since V10 and I've just been contributing more to the project and also the T3 stack, it's just been like, I don't know how to put it, but I'm not really, I suck at coming up with ideas, if you want to say it like that. I don't really build many like Apple apps on my own. But that's kind of why I like Create T3 app and tRPC, because I can just contribute and not having to come up with the idea.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like I can't think of things to make, and I'm like, well, I can at least try to make tRPC better. So let me just do that instead.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I like working on this stuff. Like I don't have to come up with some crazy idea that people will like. I just have to improve this tiny bit of software and they'll be happy.
And I think that's like a core thing, right? Like not everybody is an idea person. So yeah, like I can't make things like I've built a few SaaSes in my time, but like the idea was like pitched to me as like, hey, we should do this. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. But I've never just like come up with an idea of like, hey, this would be a cool like open source project. Let me go and build this. And I think it's cool that like tRPC and Create T3 and Create T3 Turbo have all been like really big like influences on people getting into open source, one, and two, being able to just contribute any way possible. And having that freedom of like, hey, there's like a big supportive community here. Let's just build on this. which is super exciting for me to see more people getting involved in open source, because that's always been something that I've been passionate about and built. Yeah, I'm excited.
I think
I'm excited
it's a
for more
really
TRPC.
good like opportunity to like find smaller projects because you can like do quite a lot of stuff. The way I got into tRPC was like I saw some issue like we need to port all the examples over to V10 syntax, and I was like, I can do that. And then I powered through that, and then after that, Alex asked me if I wanted to contribute more, and then I started like slowly diving into the code base and doing like actual code changes. And just, I didn't really know TypeScript when I started looking at tRPC, by the way. So you don't really have to like be scared that you need to know everything before you dive in. Just start.
I feel like Julius is always in the code base.
That's true.
I mean, Julius has enough time to come across to my Clerk T3 repo and like do a PR to fix like a build issue. And I was just like, oh, I'll get to this. And then I like logged in one day and he was like, oh, here's the here's the change that'll fix your build issue. And I was just like, oh, cool, thanks. Like, oh, good. That's one more thing I don't have to worry about today. So yeah, mad respect for you. You're like everywhere, it seems. Wherever I seem to see.
Yeah, we don't have much at school right now. That's why. Just wait till it gets more there. Then
I
Julius
wish I
disappear.
fall back a bit.
I wish I went to that school.
Well, once you go to college, I feel like you're gonna have some downtime,
Yeah,
and especially during summer, right? Probably. I feel.
hopefully we'll see.
Well, and it's only January, so you still have a while.
Yeah, the summers are miles away.
Don't remind me.
Yeah. Don't remind anyone. It's still cold in most places. Apparently, according to Theo, someone needs to offer you some money so that you can drop out already. Apparently, according to Theo, that's what you need to do, Julius.
Yes.
Let's just drop out and
I've heard that story before.
maybe
Yeah, I mean, like-
But I don't know.
Theo should just offer you some money to drop out. That's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
I think
No?
that's the ultimate answer there.
right? Just Theo, just cough up the cash, dude. Just cough up the cash.
Theo has like 10 million subs. Just point that
Yeah,
money to,
he has like yeah.
to Julie.
Yeah, exactly. Just pass that money across to Julius. He apparently says if he had enough work, he would. And then he'd be out of a job.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Wait,
Yeah,
what
I
year
feel
are you,
that's fair.
Julius? Are you close to the end?
Sorry?
Are you close? Like how many more years do you have of school?
Half? 2.5 years.
Okay, you're half. Okay,
Mm,
all right, you still got a ways to go.
yeah. Don't worry though. Enjoy it while it
We'll
lasts.
see.
Because once you become an adult and you're in your like 30s, life is like wild. Like things happen. Everything's like you're too busy to do anything fun anymore. It's a wild time. Enjoy it while it lasts.
My prediction for
No, but I'm like second guessing myself a bit. Like I kind of want to drop out and like start working, but I also like don't want to rush it.
Yeah.
Kind of just
I'm in the
Yeah.
same place.
take it slow and just feel for it, you know.
I feel like it's like the same with like content creators where they're like on the verge of like I should just go full time in content creation, and then there's like this like I need to think about it for another 6 months and feel if this is actually what I want to do. I've seen a lot of people go through that in content creation where they're like I should just go full time. I'm making headway. I don't want to do my real job anymore, and then they spend like 6 to 8 months thinking, okay, if like I lose all my money tomorrow, like what am I going to do with myself? So I can respect the decision of like it's a big decision to give up going to uni and starting something else. That's for sure.
yeah, my prediction for these two is that they'll probably get an offer at some point in the next couple of years, and then they can make that decision. That's what I think is going to happen.
Me too. Big yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then Sachin's parents are going to kill him when he drops out.
He knows what's up.
Yeah, that's just how it works. Some you know, I didn't do college until I was like 20 something. And then I decided to go to college and then I regretted it now. In my 30s, I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just stayed doing software engineering. It was way more fun. and way less stressful.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot more unique opportunities you can get at college. So, like research, you can't really do that outside of college, or you can, but if you go to college, you can get more research opportunities if you want to do some innovation. Otherwise, I feel like you're just building apps and stuff. You're not
Yep.
really contributing software engineering as a field. I don't know. That's just me.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And again, I don't want to like turn this podcast or this
Right.
Yeah,
Right, we're just going to talk about university for an
because
hour.
we're like straight
Yeah.
pivoting. But yeah. Anyways, they're smart. TLDR.
Yeah, I agree. There is some the big brains in the room, and there's only two of them.
Me and me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The guy that couldn't figure out his camera. Yep, that guy.
I'm so sad about that.
You look
Sure.
fine. If you squint real good, like you just look normal. But, it's fine. Just don't worry about it. Yeah, so talking on top of that, like tRPC has like a lot of features like middleware and import parsers, SSR, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we can talk about that a bit, especially like middleware. Middleware is super cool. It's like the saving grace, in my opinion, of like annoyances that you don't have to worry about anymore. Do you want to talk about, one of you want to talk about middleware and how that kind of works? Which will lead us to maybe some more interesting discussions and maybe some demos in the future.
I don't really have an experience with an app, but I think Julius or Trash can share.
I mean, we're about to push out the kind of big feature of it, so I think you can announce that, Trash.
Oh, the
That's your
feature.
difference.
Well, wait, so let me back
Yeah.
up because I'm not sure if I even understand what the heck I'm supposed to be talking about. So you want to talk about like middleware and kind of how it all ties into tRPC?
Yeah. Well,
I feel like we missed a step before
sure.
middleware,
Go back.
and that's kind of like from tRPC, your app, and then what happens from that call from the client to whatever function you're calling your backend, right? So effectively, like I think what people don't realize, so every time we demo or every time I see a demo about tRPC, it's mainly about like, here's your router, and then it somehow gives you type magic on your client. And it kind of ends there for most people getting their introduction. And I think that's like the 99% use case of people right now. And then like, I think Create T3 app does a real good job kind of introducing the idea of middleware. Wait, Julius, do you guys have like a middleware? You guys kind of have like some boilerplate that kind of shows like a protected procedure maybe, or is that not true?
Yeah, if you choose next off, we give you like protected procedure.
Okay, perfect.
So like
Yeah,
we check if you have authentication and such.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so like if people aren't familiar with middleware, I feel like it's not too hard to explain, but like if you look at T3 app and like Julia said, you use the auth flag or auth option, it will kind of boil or create scaffold that all for you. But anyways, what I was saying before, like I think a lot of people don't really associate tRPC with middleware off the bat. Like when you think of tRPC, you just think type safety. You don't really think of these other capabilities that it gives you. So effectively, what it's going to do is middleware essentially are just functions that you can invoke, but when the request goes, off from the client, so before it hits its endpoint, which is some function, right? So it's a way for you to kind of go through different things of logic, append things to your request objects, or to Julius's example, authentication. So if you're going through an authentication middleware and you don't have user or you're not signed in, then that middleware essentially will kick you back out, right? So the cool thing that tRPC gives you is kind of like type safety in that experience. So it's kind of hard to say without code, but basically going back to the example that Julius brought up with authentication, let's just say like user doesn't exist, or this middleware will check if user exists on some object. If it does exist, from a type perspective, that user or that property user becomes like non-nullable or something. For lack of a better example, I'm kind of just coming up with this off the top of my head, so potentially it may not make sense. But when you're actually programming it, and it's so hard to do without code, I'm dying here. But let's just assume the happy path of authentication that your user exists when you're making the next middleware or the next function that is executed after this middleware has been, passed through. We know that a user exists. And from a TypeScript perspective, we can confidently say that user exists. So you don't need to do like question mark or like, optional chaining.user or whatever. We just know that it exists. So that's like an example of like the type safety you get. We're actually about to potentially release. So I worked on this new feature called like piping, to where you can actually quote unquote chain your middlewares before you actually consume them within some procedure. But when you chain them, you get the type safety. So for instance, you have one middleware that says, hey, we're going to pass property A. You can chain that to another middleware that says, hey, we're actually going to tack on a property B onto your context. And then when you consume that in the next middleware down the chain, it's like, hey, you have A and B in there. And it kind of gives you like that snowball effect of types. And then you can then consume them into like your procedure. It's just really hard to convey without any code. So I don't know if like anyone's going to get anything out of that, but I think the TLDR is middlewares are functions that you can execute within the lifetime of your request or whatever before it reaches its endpoint. But what tRPC is going to give you is like a type safe developer experience, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So to put that into perspective, like you can have one middleware which checks for authentication, and then you can have chain that with a new middleware that like takes that logic from the first middleware, and then you can like check if you're admin. So don't like have to duplicate a bunch of logic. So you can have like one auth procedure which you can like use to like make sure that everyone calling this procedure is authenticated, and then you can pipe that with an admin thing. So then you can like have other procedures which use like you need to be an admin to call this. So you can do like multiple steps like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess like now that I'm like sitting here and thinking about
parsers, because input parsers are also technically middleware, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's middleware behind curtain. Yeah, so I just kind of want to say that. Oh, Trash can go first. Yeah, I'll take.
So I just want to back up because I was just rambling there. So the cool thing about this new thing that's going to come out is basically composability. You can basically take all these independent middlewares and stitch them together in a type safe way. So you can't actually stitch together two completely different middlewares. You get a type error, meaning they're not compatible. And I think that's like the most important part. Because if you think about just all these independent functions, the ability to kind of stitch them together into a bigger flow is like powerful. But to do that in a type safe way is like insane. And it's hard to, when we drop it, you'll see it in the documentation, but it's super, super cool. Go ahead, Sachin.
Yeah, I just kind of make a general statement that like tRPC is not just like for type safety between your server and client. I mean, it does that, but like it's also like a really powerful backend framework. You don't see this on a surface level, but like you got middleware, multiple input parsers if you want to like chain inputs, context, like different adapters for all the frameworks. Like there's a lot more than just type safety that goes into the backend part of this.
Yeah, let's talk about context. Context is really pretty awesome. If you've never dealt with context before, it's a really, really good feature that people should know about, because I think it does a lot to power just like your app in general. If you're using tRPC and you have context, it's super awesome to be able to do what you can with the context. And like, passing a user object around or part of a user so that you can have context wherever you might need it. I think it'd be cool to talk about context for a second, kind of back up into context. Yeah. Feel free. You should be able to just, you don't have to private. You can just openly ask. You should be able to click share screen and just go ahead and share whatever you want. I think there's a share screen button in like the bottom row where you can mute your mic. Let me know if it's not working. And I'll share.
I feel like that whole discussion needed
should have had a screen.
Literally needed examples on the screen.
Yeah. This whole time we're talking about middleware, we're really talking about like context switching in middlewares. Like when you do these auth procedures, you have your like base context, and then you run some logic and check the user is authenticated, and then you return new context. And like that's how it works. But I think we have demos on that on the website, right?
Yeah, we can basically pull up like middleware or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should be able to. Anyone can share. I believe I've got it turned on for anybody. So whoever wants to drive the images, because I don't know the whole tRPC website layout. I only need 2 pages usually. So
I think Julius wrote the whole thing, so Julius can share screen.
Hold on.
he's got to minimize all his tabs first, with all his notes that he's got ready. It's like minimize.
No,
So the big
I'm
step.
pulling up the. Here we go. Let's see if we can share this. Oh no, I can't do that because my browser doesn't have access to that. And then I'm gonna have to quit.
Okay, do you want me to share? We can do it.
Yeah,
Trash.
you
Shut
do it.
down now.
Watch me just accidentally leave the stream.
That's fine.
I sent a link to the
Very fun.
new docs if you want to show those.
Oh, okay.
If you want to talk about the piping.
Yeah.
Boop, boop, boop. Let me see if this works. Please don't share my entire
Hey.
desktop.
Hold on.
There we go.
There you go. Look at that. Look at
Is
us.
it working?
Yep.
It's working.
Okay.
It's working.
Oh, heck yeah. So I guess like this is pretty much what we were just talking about. Julius, do you want to kind of just, because I know you were talking about the authorization stuff, you can kind of scan this if you want.
Let's see if we can make it. There we
That's
go.
really
That's
cool. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so that middleware we're doing there, we check.
Can you zoom in a
You
bit?
see
Sir? Thanks, bro.
in the
There
upper
we go.
context, you see that the user property is optional. So for any like public procedure or base procedure, you would have to check with the like knowledge collection or what it's called, if the user exists and if they're admin, right? So you can abstract that into a middleware, which does that for you. And that's what we do there. We check that the user is an admin, and if they're not, we throw an error. So then every procedure which uses this middleware will have that context where we know that the user is defined, and we know that there is like this is admin is true. And then we create another like base procedure, we call them admin procedure, where we use that middleware. So then when we use this admin procedure, if you don't have this user.isAdmin property, that will throw an unauthorized error. So it will be 401. And you don't have like recheck that logic for every single procedure. That's basically the simplest way I can explain it. Like,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's like the
That's
cookie cutter
pretty
example.
Yeah, so we're just like trying to eliminate the amount of code that you have to unnecessarily repeat for each like API function that you're creating. So kind of like all you have to do is write the query, and everything's just taken care of for you if you're using the right procedure.
Yeah, this is like my favorite thing. Like when we did we have a clerk tRPC minimal and then the T3 turbo example, and like being able to just use our hooks to be like, hey, is there a user here? And then never have to worry about it again for any of your protected procedures is so powerful and awesome that I don't know how many times 10 years ago when I was writing backend Java code did I have to write almost the same kind of procedure over and over again with slightly different variants, just to like have this kind of procedure of like, hey, this person is an admin and this person is allowed to do this. And it's just nice to see like write this once and not have to worry about it kind of situation. Yeah, I think this is cool. I think we should go back to context, Trash, and talk about context, because I think that kind of leads into admin.
can we just mention how much better this is in V10 too compared to V9?
Yes, we should talk about that.
Like where you had to like put it in a specific place in your router, and then everything below it's kind of
Right.
got it.
Yeah.
Now it's much more composable.
We don't talk about V9 anymore.
We gotta talk about
V9 V9 doesn't exist anymore. we
what?
blew that up.
V9. What's
Okay.
V9?
Yeah. I thought it was just like tRPC was released at V10. Wasn't that
Yeah.
how it works? Isn't that how it works?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Yeah. Can we go to talk about context real quick?
Okay, hey, let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so context is like the base data that you want to give to each request from the client, basically. So let's say you're doing authentication, since that's the example. So for context, you'll want to fetch the user connected to that request, and you're going to want to pass that down to each procedure below it, or each procedure that the client is calling. And so basically that procedure doesn't have to manually do all those calls to get the user. Instead, you can just declare it in your context. It happens once, and then it's propagated down to all these things. And then for context, you can also alter it with middleware, like you see here, the is-authed t.middleware. And here you can basically, so this is altering the context. You're checking if the user email exists. If it doesn't exist, that's just going to be unauthorized. And then you can, right there it says infer session is non-nullable. So after that, you can just access whatever's on the session, and then you can, TypeScript will infer it to exist, not be null. And you can just use that in procedures and automatically assume that everything you're using is for an authenticated user.
Which is awesome, because then you reduce the amount of optional chaining and all that kind of stuff, and any checks that you may have to do previously if you weren't using tRPC. You'd have to check, does this session exist? Okay, this session does exist. It's not null. Okay, let me do this. Having the ability to pass this around and be like, I know for a fact that when this has been used, 100% that this session won't be null, and it should contain some sort of session date.
I think it's worth.
Also,
noting,
you can patch Prisma or whatever. You don't have to import it in every single file.
Right.
Just import it here, put it in context, and then use it anywhere.
You wanted to say something, Trash?
Yeah, I didn't want to talk over him. I was like, let me count the three. I think it's just worth knowing, the high level user context, at least in my mind, is literally just a convenient way to just share some arbitrary data through to all your resolvers, essentially, right? It's in my mind, it's just here's a bag of goodies or just a bag of anything. And then I know if I shove it in context, I can access it somewhere down the line. And that's kind of
that's a good analogy.
That's essentially my Eli 5 version of it. But again, we've kind of talked about this with the middleware too. It's just the only difference here is you have this type safety experience with it, right? Context isn't really unique to tRPC in any way. If anyone has used GraphQL or anything like that, context is a thing. And the same with middleware too. Middleware is not really something that's unique to tRPC, but the thing that makes it unique within tRPC is, again, the type safety and the developer experience, right? So I just wanted to call those things out. One thing I think we wanted to share, or I guess Julius wanted me to show, was the thing that we're potentially going to release soon. I don't know when. It's kind of been chilling for a minute. Is the extending middlewares thing, and that's what we're talking about. This is what I was trying to explain. I did it extremely poorly. But since we do have code here, we can kind of basically say hey, we have two middlewares, foo and bar. We can basically say foo, let's pipe that with, let's pipe this bar middleware with foo, and then you can see that when we chain them, now that I've piped it, I have access to this foo property that was up here, right? So I now know that foo exists, and then I can say, hey, now I know I can now extend it and put bar in it, and now I know I have foo and bar. So we go down here, we have foo and bar. But again, this isn't really too much different than what we've been talking about. I think the really cool part here is us basically saving you from yourself from chaining two incompatible middlewares. So where the real power, I think, comes in is, say, for example, we have foo middleware that basically appends A here, right? And then we have another middleware.
Kind of A.
Oh, go ahead.
You change the type of A up in foo.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So the initial value of context was a nested object, right? We have a property, or we have an object of key A that has a nested property B. But we have this foo middleware that says, hey, fuck that. Let's just make A literally the letter A, right? However, we have this bar middleware that's expecting the old, I think it's expecting the old shape of the initial context. So you can see here, when we chain it, you see CTX is now just literally, it's expecting A to be an object, right? It's like, we expect it to be A.B. However, so that's where, like, does this example make sense? Oh, it does make sense.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, like, if you try to chain a middleware where you're expecting A to be this specific shape, we'll basically say, hey, no, that's not right anymore because this previous middleware turned it into literally a string. And that's when, like, we save you from chaining, like, incompatible middlewares. That's, like, super, super powerful, especially if you have, like, millions of, not millions, but you have, like, a handful of middlewares. It's kind of hard to know, like, you're basically putting Legos or Tetris pieces together. But through types, we basically say, hey, these two Tetris pieces are actually compatible. Versus without that type safety, you wouldn't know until runtime that something's broken, right? So that's, like, the cool thing about this feature. Did that make sense to everybody?
That makes sense. I'm glad that we're making Trash do his own interview here. Feels like he's doing an interview and he's nervous about the fact that he's going to say something wrong.
Well, I was looking at the example and it didn't look right to me when I was reading it. Because so Julius wrote the documentation here because I suck at documentation. So this is, like, my second time ever seeing this. And I was like, wait, is this example right? And it threw me off.
Just putting all the pressure on you. It's okay. It's okay.
That's fine.
That's why I get to be the MC, right? That's why I get to do this part because I don't have to worry so much.
Yeah, see, Theo's on my side. He got tripped up.
Don't make him feel bad, Theo. Don't lines saying, "Oh, that tripped me up." This example could be clearer. No, don't give him an excuse.
What's wrong with A and B? I mean, it's very intuitive.
You're intuitive.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Well, like, bar middleware is a base procedure. Like, it expects the, like, context to pass in before, so you can't access other properties that have been overwritten.
Apparently, Theo's just trying to make you feel better. It's okay.
No, the example makes perfect sense. I was just like, it threw me off looking at, because I just haven't really seen it in a while. I was like, wait a minute, is that right? I don't know if that's right. No,
by the way, can we just talk about these? Can we talk about how good these code, like, snippets are? Like, when you look at documentation, usually, like, code snippets are just shit. No offense to everybody that writes docs, including myself. I write docs every day and my docs are shit. So it's good to see, like, these really, like, good examples with, like, this sort of even like a tooltip style, like, drop down that says, like, hey, this is what it actually is, so you can follow even if you don't understand the whole concept. Having something like that just to be able to be like, oh yeah, I'm not stupid, let me keep following, is really cool, by the way. Just like to point that out. Because, like, yeah, we could use some of this at Clark. Maybe I'll steal this idea. Big brain time.
I don't know if you're using...
it adds up to your compile time, though.
That's fine. Compile away.
Slow.
I don't care. It just makes it easier for people to read the docs and understand, like, if it's a new concept that you've never met before.
For sure.
Having things like this, like the small tooltip section there that just, like, says, like, this is the property, like, allows you to follow along really well. And I think everyone should be, proud of how tRPC looks. And Create T3 app, like, the docs there have really been, like, upped recently too. It's super exciting to see these docs come together. Can we talk about output validation? I know this is a bit of a weird thing, but I think it's, like, a cool, like, using, like, out of the box with custom validators and ZOD and all that kind of stuff. I know in the past there's it's one of my features that I really like, and I think people should know about how, like, type safety outputs work.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever used that, though.
Yeah.
I don't think I have.
I just want them to be inferred.
Yes, most people don't use output validation. Like, your output type's just inferred from the whatever you're returning from your procedure. It's just inferred from that data. and that's what you see on your client, whatever type that is. But if you need something more strict, like say you're returning something extremely sensitive from your database, let's like if you're the U.S. government, right? You want to make sure that you're returning what's what the types say you are. You don't want to return any more or any less than that. So that's what you would use output validation for. Like you don't want to leak that sensitive data. So you would define. Can you scroll down a bit? I think. Yeah. So with Zod, so you would just define a Zod schema there, and then Zod will parse the data, so it'll remove anything that doesn't match up with the schema that you declared there, and it'll make sure all the types match up. So that's going to prevent you from leaking anything that types say that. Sorry, let me restart. So if there's a difference between your types and the Zod schema, it's going to see that, and it's going to remove it. So you can't leak anything that you don't declare there.
Which I think you nailed it on the head, which is like sensitive data that you don't want to pass accidentally through in your output for some reason. Like, yeah, inference is great, but there's some cases, US government's a good case, or just like any sensitive data that you don't want to leak, you can use this like output, which, only will show what you're expecting on the front end, which I think is a neat feature. Like, it's not used very often, I don't think. I don't use it either, but I think it's one of those cool like features that people may not know really exists or what it's for.
Yeah. I think it's another example of like how extensible tRPC is too. Like input and output are just implemented as middlewares, like we were talking before. All that happens is that it's parsing the input before it goes to your procedure, or it's parsing the output after it leaves your procedure. And that's all just middleware. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you
sorry, I got distracted by someone in chat, and then I was like,
it's fine.
I was like, hello?
Hello, I've just died. That's my brain shutting off. It's getting late. My brain just shut off and I'm done. Sorry. I apologize. Yeah, I think maybe we can talk a bit about just how if someone was to wanted to get started with tRPC today, like, oh, we've just seen this cool stream, now I want to get started with tRPC, like, what would be your like go-to, like, here's a best example, or here's how to get started like really easily with tRPC so that someone could check it out and play around with it and maybe try and grab some of those core concepts and understandings.
So I think Julius might have something to say about this.
Yeah, there's this DLI that you can use, and that scaffolds everything for you, so you don't have to go through all the boilerplate. No, but I don't know. V10 also made it very like a lot easier to set it up yourself. But once you have done that once, you don't really want to do it again. But like for the first time, it's a good idea to set it up yourself, I think. Well, maybe not the first time. The first time might be like nice to have someone else do it, but you should definitely set it up yourself sometimes so that you know like what the pieces do. But we do a good job in creating 3 app, especially now with the latest release. We have like commented the source a lot. So you don't really need to leave for the documentation to like understand the big concept. So for example, like, I don't know if you can pull it up.
Do you want to pull it up, Trash?
What's the, is it create.t?
It's create
something.gg or something?
Yeah.
What's the URL?
Yeah, let me.
It's one of those wild.
I Google it. There it is.
Yeah. It's like number one if you just,
Yeah.
One of those wild ones that Theo's come up with.
Wait, let me, share this tab instead.
There we go.
Just show that, maybe. I don't know. Because
look at this beautiful site.
No, I mean, when that changed
in the private chat.
Oh yeah,
okay.
He wants to show real code.
Oh, you want to show code?
Yeah. Doesn't want to show shiny websites, just the code.
Well, you plug the site.
Yeah, so
there you go.
You see, like we have gotten like.
Can you zoom in a bit more?
Beyond like commenting stuff in for like all this boilerplate, so you kind of know what it does. and like explain the big concept, and then also like link to the appropriate docs. So like you can like basically anywhere you can like see that we link to the sectioning docs if you do want to like read more in depth. But generally you can like get started with just this and like read the comments and like, okay, this helper generates the internals, blah, blah, blah. So I think, I don't know, I shouldn't maybe not talk for everyone, but if you just init a project with Create T3 app, I think you should have a relatively easy time. Just like checking now, adding a procedure, adding a router, see what happens on the front end. And yeah, when you need more, just reach for the docs. But I think this is like a good way to get started and just explore the app that we scaffold for you and read the comments and just try it out yourself. That's the best way to learn it. Just try it out.
Yeah, I'd definitely +1 to Create T3 app at this point. Like, I think it's just that one is the easiest way to get started. It gives you a good scaffolding with good like folder structure, which is nice. And then on top of that, you can add pieces that you actually need. So if you need like Prisma and you need Nextauth, you can do that, or whatever. I think it's super great to get started that way and be able to just see it in action. I think is like an aha moment for a lot of people. Like seeing like, oh, if I change this, oh, on the front it's now saying this. Like, oh, that's weird. Like that aha moment of how it's all connected together and in an application, I think is like really important for people. And I think the Create T3 app has done a really good job of giving you that nice boilerplate with good examples.
And we also have like, if you're not using Next or maybe you don't like, there is a lot of examples on the tRPC repo. Like, I think we have like, I don't know, is it like 20? With like different frameworks, if you like use Fastify, Express. I think we even have like Dino. And like just a ton, even like WebSockets. So definitely check these out too. Like there is a lot of variation here.
Yeah.
And we also have like the awesome board, right?
Yeah.
The awesome tRPC site on the docs. Like there's like Svelte, Solid, Remix.
There's the Create JD
everything.
app. There's the Create JD app now, right? That just showed up. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, I need to get on this list. Apparently, I need to get Create T3 Turbo -Clerk on there so that people can have end-to-end type safety and authentication in both ends. Yeah. I mean, it was so easy. Like, so from my experience, just talking like in general. So if you don't know what I do for a job, my job is that I work at Clerk and I'm a dev advocate. So I build a lot of projects and I build a lot of like starters and repos and all sorts of things to get people excited about it. And doing tRPC was like the number one request in our Discord for like, I think I was at either Jamstack conference or Next conference. And it was on my way home and I had it finished in my like hour layover. Like, here's Create T3 app plus Clerk, like all done, easy peasy. Which then led to us writing docs for it and everything like that. And then the second request was the Create T3 Turbo, which kind of came down the pipeline. Like Theo reached out to me, or Theo reached out to somebody and they reached out to me, whatever. And like, even that was like maybe like 30 or 40 minutes of work to like bootstrap that into an app that worked with Clerk on both ends. And it's just so easy to like take pieces that you actually want if you're using one of these boilerplates, because it's especially Create T3 app, it's so easy and so well maintained that like if you don't use one of the options in the CLI, it's easy to just put in whatever you want to use instead. And I think that's why it's so easy to build on and so easy to like use in general.
Yeah, I think like tRPC is actually really low level. Think about it compared to other API frameworks like, I don't know, Nest. Yeah, you can just build whatever. You can combine it with whatever tools you're using, whatever you like. like Clerk instead of Nextauth, or I don't know, a different database client than Prisma. Yeah, we're only abstracting like the boring parts away for you, really.
Which I think is the best part. Is like, I don't want to do the boring parts anymore, right? Like, it was the same reason I'm at Clerk, is that I don't want to make authentication anymore. Like, I'm bored of building the same auth over and over again, or using a boilerplate for the same auth over and over again. Which is how I ended up at Clerk, was like, auth is boring. Nobody wants to implement it. So now I don't have to. And the similar thing with tRPC, which is like all the boring boilerplate or all the boring parts that take time away from like building your app and your business logic, is now already there for you. So you can build that business logic, or you can build that app that you've been trying to build with ease.
Right.
Do we have anything else we want to talk about? Anything we want to show off?
Show off. I don't know. Do you guys have
We
anything
were
to
worried
show
that
off?
we weren't going to film 90 minutes, and now we filled 60, and now I'm concerned that we might not have something for the last bit.
I mean, I could
Fine.
talk all day.
Crash, yeah.
I can
I
talk
mean,
all
go
day.
for
Start
it.
live coding and the time will go away.
It's true.
I mean,
want
we
to see
could
some
show
live coding from Crash.
Yeah, we could do create
heck
T3 app
no.
if you want.
I wasn't anticipating answering any questions today. That's why I was like, am I going to answer these? No.
Yep. You can't say no once you're in this live stream. That's how it works.
It's true. It's true. I'm trying to think. I think we've already tackled anything. Again, like I think create T3 app is probably one of the best ways to get up and going, assuming you want to use a next app. Otherwise, like Julia said, we have all these great apps. I will plug my Next.js talk. I do think it's a good talk to basically go over everything pretty fast. So you can go to Vercel's YouTube and look at that talk. I pretty much talk way better in that than I just did in this podcast for sure. So if anyone is actually new to the tRPC or is interested, I would definitely give that a look. Also, Chris, is it Ehrlich? Chris Ehrlich has a really cool video on YouTube that he just put out that kind of just shows how tRPC works, which is super, super awesome. And then Julius just dropped the blog post about how to create a tiny tRPC client, which is great because I think there are a lot of people, especially due to this whole like evolution of create T3 app and just Theo's community. Everyone is kind of chomping at the bit to see where they can make their impact. I think Julius's blog post definitely lowers that barrier to entry for sure. So like for me personally, like when I went to look into tRPC code base, I was terrified. Like I'm okay at TypeScript. I feel like I'm pretty decent, a little bit above average for sure. But when I went into tRPC, I was just like, dude, I don't even know what the heck is going on. There was like a million generics chained together, and I like literally my mind blew up. And then proxies. Not a lot of people are exposed to proxies. So Julius did a really good job on just kind of like showing how tRPC works, one with the types, but also like how the proxy like plays a big role in this. I mean, that's pretty mind blowing. And I think it was really well written. And then Sachin has, I think the first of its kind, I feel like, in my opinion, a blog post about TypeScript performance. I think TypeScript performance is something that's really not talked about because I don't think anyone actually knows how it works. So check out Sachin's blog post. He pretty much like, it's no secret that like tRPC is powered by TypeScript. So there is limitations on what we can do based on the limitations of TypeScript, right? So I feel like tRPC, and I'll let Sachin talk to this too, but I feel like tRPC is in this interesting scenario where, we have to actually be mindful of our TypeScript performance because that's going to limit, the scale of our consumers' apps, right? You can only have so many routers, procedures, etc., because that's limited by the performance of TypeScript. Because you'll see like your app literally slowed to a crawl, like in VS Code or whatever. Sachin, I don't know if you have anything to add on to that, but I just wanted to shout those things out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like we want to reduce the amount of impact that tRPC has on, I guess, anything on your code base. It's just supposed to be a small layer that things pass through. Not supposed to be anything that severely impacts performance or anything like that. So that applies to your editor too. We don't want to have a huge impact on like your editor, we don't want to slow down everything just because you're using tRPC. Although there's a lot of stuff that we can't control, like Zod and Prisma. They also have young TypeScript, so like if you're using those two, you're just gonna have problems at some point. But yeah, we're trying to do as much as we can at tRPC, so like you don't have to think about like minimizing your performance as much, because it's supposed to be like getting you up and ready as fast as you can, and keeping you going as long as we can do that for. But yeah, for tRPC, there's not a lot that we can do to increase performance, but there's some like terrible stuff that we can do that will make your editor go crazy, and that's the kind of things that we're working on fixing. I'm not aware of any problems right now, but that's pretty much what I wrote about in my blog post. If you want to go read about that, it does get into some advanced TypeScript though. But I feel like TypeScript performance is like definitely becoming more and more important. Like, I mean, TypeScript is like going into everything, every library right now. Like, I don't know, I'm not even aware because I don't write that much apps right now. But I don't know, like Xstate, there's a lot of people there who are working on some crazy TypeScript. And yeah, like if you want your editor to run fast, you're gonna need to learn how to minimize your TypeScript.
For sure. So I think I'll round this up with some easy peasy questions. If someone wants to help with tRPC, maybe like be first time contributor or maybe in the Create T3 app, either one, like what's the easiest way for someone to get involved in that open source? Do you guys do like good first time tags? Is there is it better to join the Discord and chat with somebody there? Like what's the best way to like get into that space and be like, hey, I want to help?
I don't
That
know.
wasn't an easy question.
I just don't want to talk
I don't
over
think
anybody.
there's many good first issues right now, but
I was gonna wait for Julius to answer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we do mark some good first issues on tRPC. Well, a lot of it is like complex TypeScript, but we try to mark what we can. I think Alex has marked a few in the past, and there might be a few marked right now. But if you do want to get started with tRPC, you can like the docs are a good place. I think we have a lot of work to do on those still, and you can just ask in our Discord, and we'll probably point some things out that you can help with. And I think there's a lot of more opportunities that Create T3 app because I feel like it's something that anyone can get involved in. Julius can expand more.
yeah, I mean, documentation really, like that's both for Create T3 app and tRPC. I think like there is a lot that can be done to improve the documentation. Not that they're bad, but and also like more examples maybe. Like we have a lot of like minimal examples, but if you want to like make examples where you like incorporate different technologies, I think that would be appreciated.
For sure.
Because like right now, most examples are like minimal this, minimal that, minimal, but I don't know. I think we could do like more bigger example because all our big examples are Next.js. Right?
Yeah,
so I would say that's.
I was going to say we run into the same thing at Clark, which is like all our examples are like minimal, and we need to do those more, like something more complex or less specific to one language. And that's an easy way to get started in open source. It may not feel like the biggest contribution in the world, like, oh, I just wrote some docs, but like docs are hard. Docs are important. Docs are like the lifeblood of a project. If your docs are terrible, your project probably won't live to tell the tale. If people can't get started with whatever they want to use, like they'll move on and find something else. So I think docs are definitely a good place to get started.
Yeah, and if you get started with like the docs or just making some examples, I think it's a good way to like transition into working on the actual code. I think that's kind of how everyone gets started, to be honest, contributing to like the core code. Yeah,
for sure. Trash, you got anything to add?
I got plenty of things to add.
Go for it, man. Don't be quiet. This is the quietest I've ever seen you.
Well, I'm just making sure everyone's talking and gets their piece in, because this is, I like being in this environment, so I can talk my ass off forever. There's a couple more things I wanted to call out. We're kind of like in this era where I keep seeing GraphQL versus tRPC, and everyone's kind of like, should I use tRPC? Should I use GraphQL? So I wanted to call out some things that are online that you can watch to kind of answer those questions. And there's like a number of spaces I see on Twitter as well. So I think Theo and Max Stoiber, they had a discussion over in the Bay Area about tRPC or GraphQL. That's a really good talk. I recommend everyone check that out. There was another one recently, I think a week or two ago, that had Alex, the creator of tRPC, and Phil, who was I think he's the creator of Urkel and was at Formidable Labs. They kind of talked about the pros and cons of GraphQL and where tRPC shines and where GraphQL shines. If anyone is like, because if you've used GraphQL and you look at like the syntax of tRPC, you see query, mutation, context and stuff, you kind of be like, wait, it kind of looks like GraphQL, to be honest. So I can't recommend those two videos. I think they're on YouTube. I don't have the link on me. Maybe we can put those somewhere at some point.
Put it in
but yeah, if you're ever curious on whether you should use GraphQL or tRPC, or what are the actual deltas on advantages and disadvantages of each, definitely check those two talks out. And then to kind of piggyback on how we can contribute to tRPC, Alex is really good about, I guess, being pretty welcoming in general. And like, if you want to do something, just do it, right? Like at the end of the day, if you see an issue, just literally do it. Like no one's going to smack you on the hand. I think that's pretty much what Julius did. Julius kind of just came in like guns blazing and just like literally did a bunch of stuff and we noticed it. We have like this channel internal to the tRPC team, and we were like, who's this Julius dude? Why is he going nuts in the code base? And then that's when we like invited him in the channel, and we're just like, dude, Julius, you're crazy. And then he still does it to this day. And that's kind of how I got involved. Like, you don't have to be like, sure, like the code is pretty insane on TypeScript, but that wasn't my introduction to being a contributor. It was like, hey, we want to redo the documentation page and we want to migrate from V9 to V10 docs. And I was like, okay, well, I can do that at least. Like I definitely can't jump into the code base and help there, but I can, I am familiar with just a website in general. So that's kind of like how I got introduced. And then luckily, like Alex and Sachin, they were super cool. Like, I pretty much talk to them every day more than I talk to like my coworkers, I feel like. But yeah, so like I think the team in general is super open to contributions. We welcome it. Like we don't get paid to do this, right? Julius and Sachin are busy with school. I have a full-time job. Alex has a full-time job. So it's like at this point, we need as much help as we can get. So if anyone's listening to this and they think it's a cool project and they want to contribute, like whether you are confident or not, Julius and Sachin both said that they didn't even know TypeScript before they were tRPC contributors. That just goes to show it's like, hey, just go find an issue, do it, or just go jump in the code base and poke around. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. I think the community has like tripled or quadrupled, I feel like. So there's like people that are just answering each other's questions, which is like super cool to see. And that's another way to kind of contribute. If you use tRPC daily, and someone asks a question that go answer that question in the Discord. It's like another way. Not every contribution needs to be a code contribution. It can be simply asking a question or doing a talk, right? So that's kind of like my 2 cents on that.
Yeah,
very good.
For sure. And tRPC popularity has exploded since June or July of 2022, where it really started to rocket. So I imagine you guys are like getting a lot of questions, getting a lot of like people asking, some of the basics of tRPC. How does this work? How am I supposed to do this? So definitely hop in the Discord. It's incredibly active, and it's good to see. So yeah, I think people should definitely, if they want to help, that might be an even better way if they're not as confident in writing docs or code. Cool.
Yeah, you could just take the approach Chris did. Chris just made a really awesome video,
right?
Basically explain how tRPC works like, from the client. And like honestly, I learned some stuff from there. I was like, oh, okay.
So did I.
Yeah.
so did I. I was
So-
like, oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah, I think a
Yeah,
lot
like
of people
even if you see the code, it's like it's hard to put it together in your head.
right,
and-
right,
yeah.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we can wrap it up, guys. 15 minutes early, but I really appreciate Julius staying up late, and everybody joining and making accommodations for me because it was kind of late on my side too.
That's really nice.
No, it's fine. Like, I was appreciated, and thanks, Trash, for figuring out how to use a webcam and a microphone. We appreciate that too.
Technical
yeah.
difficulties. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And thanks for everybody that came out to the stream. It was super popular. There was lots of people talking in chat and asking questions, and Theo was in there answering a lot of them for us. Yeah, and this VOD will be up, and we'll get a link to all the different things, the blog posts on TypeScript and Julius's blog post on tRPC. We'll do your talk too, which I think is one of the best talks about tRPC personally. And then yeah, I'm super excited to see where tRPC goes this year.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for everyone coming out.
Yeah.